I'm Dr. Brad Hafford, archaeologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and I've just returned from a field season at the ancient city of Nimrud in northern Iraq. Now, I joined the Penn team in the spring of 2023 under the direction of Dr. Michael Danti. Now, he had already done a season in 2022, the first one where he established sort of our base camp and began the work. Part of the reason that we're there is to help assess the damage that ISIS did during their occupation, and we're there to help not only assess that damage but also to reconstruct some of these ancient buildings. But first we have to know the layout, so we're doing maps of the entire Acropolis, the high city, and we're trying to put together the old maps because archaeologists have been working there for the past 200 years pretty much. We are concentrating at the moment on two areas that are poorly understood. I've done a lot of filming while we were there, and I'm still editing and trying to put them together into an informative sequence. I think it's best to begin with a sort of general overview of the site and the excavations. All right, I'm here with Dr. Michael Danti, the director of the Nimrud excavations. And, well, Michael, I want you to hopefully tell us about what you've been finding here in, I think, what's called the upper chambers?
That's right.
What is that?
It's really the palace of Nirari III. It dates to around, give or take, 800 BC. It was first excavated around 1850 by Austin Henry Layard as part of his excavations of the Northwest Palace just to the north of us across a very large bulk. And it really is an extension of the Northwest Palace. It has a residential reception suite at its core, which are two very long rectangular rooms, and then a courtyard in front of that. The courtyard is here next to us. The upper chambers proper that Layard excavated were these three rooms at the north end of the building, and Layard excavated to a lustration slab. It's a large slab of Mosul marble or gypsum, carefully designed, and it has a bowl-shaped depression without a drain at its center. So we know essentially the extent of Layard's excavations, but his plan that was published in his popular reports really didn't show the relationship of the slab to the upper chambers, and there have been questions ever since Layard's. So the last excavations in this area were done by the Iraqis in 1993 as a part of their work in the Northwest Palace. So we came in last year in the fall. We cleared out the old excavations in the upper chambers of Layard. We cleared the area of Muzahim Hussein's trenches, and then we've been expanding the coverage of the palace to the south towards what we think in the area there, where there's a sort of a drainage trench or a wadi that comes off of the mound through the city wall. What we think that is a gate. So Nirari chose an area south of the Northwest Palace that was presumably open for a new building, and then it was close to the gate, and it had these great views from its courtyard, we assume anyway, off onto the floodplain here to my left of the Tigris River. Inside, we've found a number of really important features. Starting off here in the courtyard, you can see that the courtyard is paved with two layers of baked brick. We've done soundings through those. There's a layer of clean sand on top of a mud brick bench. Or platform that the building rests on. And then the doorway that you see there has an inscribed slab that provides the genealogy of King Nirari III. There's another doorway here to the south on our right that had a similar type of inscription, but it's really suffered from the elements. That doorway was left open in the palace and water has heavily eroded it, while the doorway here still has its inscription because at some point in the history of the palace, they decided to block that door with unbaked brick, and that's preserved the inscription quite nicely for us. One of the recent rooms that we're beginning to excavate here has sort of a poorer man's version of a lustration slab that's made out of baked bricks with a brick at the center that has a shallow depression, and you can see a sort of linear feature. That's a tram rail. They usually come in pairs. They're rectangular blocks that have a runnel running through them, and they're used essentially, we think, for wheeled braziers to move fire or heated water closer to these lustration slabs. So they're frequently found in archaeological association in the Northwest Palace, and we have 2 sets of them here. So now we'll move on to some of the other rooms of the palace. We're in the first or western room of the twin reception suite, the residential reception suite. We're looking to the west, back towards the courtyard that we were discussing previously. And this is the lustration slab that we found on the floor of the room. And here you can see a fairly well-preserved tram rail that's running north to south. When Layard found this, the tram rail was found in position, but after his excavations, unfortunately, we think that things were left open, and at some point someone disturbed the western set of the tram line. Over there where you see geotextile in this earthen feature, that's actually a blocked doorway that we've been investigating. That doorway wasn't blocked in antiquity. It was excavated by Layard because he had another slab with a genealogy of Nirari III, and that slab is now in the British Museum. And in the pit there where the geotextile is sitting, we found the chips from Layard sawing the slab down so that it was easier to ship back to the United Kingdom. Moving this way through this doorway, this is the second room of the reception suite, and we found a few surprises in this room. And it's your typical large rectangular room. The floor was covered in what's called Assyrian palaceware. Lots and lots of fine bowls and cups. There was ostrich eggshell distributed across the floor. And there were a number of fallen wall paintings. We know from Layard's reports that this room in particular and some of the upper chambers to our north had elaborate wall paintings in a variety of colors, and we found those fallen on the floor. And what was interesting, as you work on the wall paintings, you find that there are multiple layers of plaster, so there's wall painting over wall painting. In some cases we have the earlier wall paintings, in other cases we have the last wall paintings that were preserved in the room. So that wasn't really a surprise, having read Layard's reports, but what was a surprise, as we moved further into the room in the unexplored areas, we found this unique column base made from Mosul marble. It's partially covered now to protect it, but it has this interesting pattern here. It's 16 sides divided by lines, and in its center, which you'll have to take my word for this, there is an iron core, a piece of iron sticking up through the center of the column that we think was used to attach the wooden shaft of the column. And not far from this area, we also found a limestone capital that we think was on top of this. And that's really unprecedented for this time period. We'll show another one of these columns here in a minute. This was a room that had been partially excavated by Layard and then in 1993 by Mazahim Hussein. Over on the side, you enter the room from essentially the east. You come through a doorway where there's another slab that has the genealogy of Nirari III. It's covered up right now because it's in really great condition and we don't want it to get damaged. When we excavated this room, we were surprised to find, that had never been reported, that many of the bricks in this room had palace inscriptions of Nirari III. It's very helpful for us to have those, but we noticed the floor had a depression in it. The floor had subsided in a sort of a circular pattern, and we noticed as we moved to the south, the floor rose up in kind of a peculiar way. So we were intrigued by what might be below this baked brick floor. So we took some of the bricks up and we began to excavate, and rather than finding the typical unbaked brick or Libyan bench or mastaba that the palaces are founded on, that's several meters thick, we found that there was just soft fill with cultural debris in it, and we found another one of our column bases below the floor. It doesn't appear to be finished, but it's very similar to the other column base, and I think that this is either a reject or they decided they only needed one column in the residential reception suite, and this one doesn't quite have the dividing bands on its 16 sides, but what we can see in the top of this is the circular depression that was used to put the iron rod into the column to attach the wooden shaft. So this was a really unexpected find. This room would have originally functioned probably as a treasury for Nirari or possibly whoever else this reception suite was built for. Now, and that raises another important question. We know that this building is associated with Adad-Nirari III, but there's some speculation, and I think that it's reasonable, that Adad-Nirari built this residential reception suite for his very powerful mother, Queen Sammu-Rammat, who is also known later as Queen Semiramis. So, while we haven't found definitive proof of that, that's one of the reasons we're really interested in this particular building.
Adad-Nirari III's mother, Sammu-Rammat, also known by her Greek name, or the Greek version of her name as Semiramis or Semiramis, was an interesting and very powerful character, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of information about her from the time when she was alive. We get stories many hundreds of years later, the Greco-Roman stories of this fabulous queen who ruled on her own, and some of that may be true, but a lot of it is clearly mixed with myths, probably of the goddess Ishtar, so we can't trust it all. And I wish we had more information from her contemporary period. I think we can talk a little more about her, but we've got to do that in a later video. For now, I'll just say thanks for watching and join us again on Artifactually Speaking.